Hi everyone, my name is Poulomi. I'm a film critic and programmer with MAMI for the South Asia non-feature section. Welcome to the press conference for the South Asia non-feature section of Jio MAMI Film Festival 2023. This is the first year where we've expanded our programming to include South Asia and diaspora in both the features and the non-feature section. This year, in the non-feature section, we've selected 24 films from countries like India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Myanmar, and the diaspora. And these 24 films are being played during the fest in 4 packages. They are all themed accordingly. The package and the filmmakers that we are going to be talking to today is a package called Social Animal. We have 5 films in this section from, again, India, diaspora, and Bangladesh. And these 5 films basically offer us a peek into the state of the nation, right from commentaries on class, on colonial hangover, on toxic air and caste. So I'll just go ahead and introduce the 3 filmmakers that we have with us today. We have Aniket Kumar, who's directed the film D Grade Se A Grade Tak. We have Pranjal Dua, who's directed the film Flamingos and Other Migratory Birds Tour. And we have Sean Sankalp Raju, who's directed the film Nazar. Um, so the f- so the first thing that I want to ask all 3 of you is to just give us an idea about how all 3 of you have started your filmmaking journeys. I know this is Aniket's first film, but both of you have made a couple of films before this film. So just take us through what got all of you all interested in filmmaking. How do you start out making your first film, and how did you get here? You all decide who wants to start.
Hi, I'm Pranjal. So it's been about, let me count. Okay, I started, basically went to FTI in 2007, finished in 2013. So that's 5 years. And then since 2013, I've been between Delhi and Bombay. That's another 10 years. So it's been about, 15 years of trying to make films, and succeeding sometimes and not succeeding other times. And this one happened to be all right, I guess. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sean. I think my love for filmmaking started with theater. I used to write for my community theater, and it's harder to put on plays. The beautiful thing about film is that you can make it with fewer resources, and so I didn't go to film school. I started with little video cameras and kind of built my way up by making every mistake that you possibly can at least once. And the thing that really sustained me is a love for movies. The love for movies and just constantly failing is, I think, a good recipe to start a film career.
मेरा जर्नी तो काफ़ी छोटा ही है इनके मुकाबले। तो मेरा एडमिशन हुआ था 2018 में, और वहाँ से मतलब कि उससे पहले फ़िल्में देखते थे, पढ़ते थे। उसके बाद बीच में कोविड आ गया, तो उस दौरान बहुत सारी चीज़ें लिखने की कोशिश करी। ये फ़िल्म भी उसी दौरान लिखी थी। तो फिर 2022 में शूट किया है इसको। उसके अलावा मेरा कुछ है नहीं इसमें।
बट आप मतलब फिल्म स्कूल जाना चाहते थे एकदम बचपन
हाँ।
से, वो डिसाइडेड था?
फ़िल्म स्कूल के बारे में मेरे हाई स्कूल में मालूम चला, एफटीआई के बारे में और एसआरएफटीआई के बारे में। तो वहाँ पे पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन कोर्स था, तो ग्रेजुएशन कैसे भी कंप्लीट किया। उसके बाद एडमिशन ले लिया फ़िल्म स्कूल में, ताकि आगे जो अपना सोचा है करने का जीवन में, वो कंटिन्यू कर पाए।
Okay, now could all 3 of you tell us a little bit about the movies that are playing at Mami, like each of the movies that you all have made? What was the inspiration point? Why did you want to tell this specific story?
The film is called Nazar. It's a black and white period piece, an Akbar Bilbul adaptation. It's centered around the story of villagers who think that there's a woman casting Nazar upon them. And Birbal is tasked to decide whether the superstition of the village is real or not. I wanted to film it kind of in the black and white aesthetic because I think I love noirs, and I think that Birbal has always been kind of a detective figure to me. And I also think thematically it really helped and made it easier to create that period piece. As for the motivation for why I wanted to write it the way I did, I think it was a combination of it, first of all, being the core of everything I write needs to come from a place of joy. And it was fun to write an Akbar Birbal folktale, a folktale that I grew up reading and kind of creating my own twist on it. And the wonderful thing about folktales is that they are always alive, and they change and adapt, and to change it into something that hopefully would be more reflective of today's times was interesting. And to there's a lot going on in both America and here when it comes to the themes of Nazar. So kind of talking about a folktale and marrying it with current issues was something that was interesting to me.
Okay, so the film that I made is called The Flamingos and Other Migratory Birds Tour. Um, uh, it's about these three stories. Basically, there's a guy, there's a newly wed electrician who's moved to Bombay, and he can never keep his phone charged for some reason. So that's his thing. Then there's a pregnant couple who've been relocated to this SRA colony, and they're trying to, which is right next to a oil refinery. So they want to move away from there because it's very toxic. The air is very toxic. They have a baby on the way. And then there's this guy, this college guy who has a crush on this girl who conducts flamingo tours. So he pretends to like birds so that he can be close to her. So basically, it's about these people, these characters who are all trying to, hold on to something, find like an anchor point in a city which is unrelenting, so to speak. So yeah.
जो मेरी फ़िल्म है डी ग्रेड से ए ग्रेड तक, वो मेरी मेमोरी से बहुत ज़्यादा लिखी हुई है कि बहुत सारे अलग-अलग इंसिडेंट्स हैं, उसको मैंने थोड़ा-सा फ़िक्शनलाइज़ किया। वो एक रेलवे ट्रॉली मैन के बारे में है जो कि दिन भर मेहनत करता है और रात को शराब पी करके घर आता है, और उसका जीवन ऐसे ही चल रहा था जब तक कि उस पे एक एक्यूज़ेशन लग जाता है, एक क्राइम का एक्यूज़ेशन, जिसके कारण मतलब कि उसे ह्यूमिलिएट किया जाता है, उसके सीनियर्स ह्यूमिलिएट करते हैं। उसके बाद वो क्या करता है, वो उसके बारे में कहानी है कि क्या वो शांत रह जाएगा या फिर उसका जवाब देगा। तो ये फ़िल्म एक्चुअली क्लास और कास्ट को मतलब कि जहाँ दोनों मिलते हैं आकर के, वो दर्शाता है काफ़ी, और ये दिखाता है कि कभी ना कभी हर किसी को जवाब देना ही पड़ेगा। तो ये उसी के बारे में।
All three of your films also have like this common thread of justice. Like that's an overarching theme that plays on in your films, even though all three of you kind of deal with it differently. In Nazar, this idea of like, all of us grew up reading Akbar and Birbal. And I remember in my childhood, I used to like think of them as like wise figures, which you kind of like turned on its head in your film because they do come across as people who like let their power kind of affect the sense of judgment, and so the idea of justice that they give is kind of lopsided. And even in Flamingos, the idea of justice comes from this these group of college kids who are trying to kind of fight this case, but they what they think is the right answer solution may not help the people that they're fighting for. And similarly in your film as well, this idea of, like you spoke about, this railway trolley man who once feels like his humiliation has come at a cost where he needs to speak back, and that for him is kind of like answering back. So take me through like how each of you dealt with this particular theme when you were making this film. How did you want to like kind of like explore it? What was it about that you were excited about, like exploring it in a way that wasn't like that we hadn't seen before?
Um, so, um, so we've like it's it's a very interesting question, by the way, and a very interesting observation that you found, in all three films. So whenever one is talking about, things that people are going through, difficulties that people are facing or whatever, it somehow, when we read reports on these things, it somehow boils down to numbers, right? And somewhere the human is left behind, right? Like for example, the Gaza situation right now, we're dealing in numbers. We don't even know what those numbers mean. It's just a random figure somewhere, and we don't know those people. We don't know the lives that they have been leading, and so my thing was that, and it's always someone else kind of reporting or whatever, so they're not part of, yeah, in that way. So I just thought, like, what is the person who's actually going through this, or whatever they might be going through this, what are their lives like? So it was about that, not about trying to make a point or whatever. It was just about trying to figure out that this person is living that life right now, and with whatever that is happening around him, all the things that are right or wrong about his world or her world, um, he has to go through it. Where this is what it is, and he has to somehow manage. And so I just wanted to explore that more than any other thing.
मेरा अप्रोच काफ़ी सिंपल था इस फ़िल्म को लेकर के, क्योंकि मेरे मेमोरी से निकली है फ़िल्म, तो बहुत ज़्यादा बच्चन की फ़िल्में जो थी, शराबी है, लावारिस है, दीवार है, तो मेरा जो कैरेक्टर था प्रोटैगनिस्ट, वो भी काफ़ी मतलब उस बच्चन के किरदार से इंस्पायर्ड था, एंग्री यंग मैन वाले, कि भले ही वो सही नहीं हो, शराब पीता हो, लेट से घर आता हो और चिल्लाते हुए आता हो, लेकिन ये ज़रूरी नहीं कि वो ख़राब आदमी है। तो उस चीज़ को लेकर के एक सिंपल सी कहानी है कि उसका जीवन दिनचर्या चल रहा है आराम से, और अचानक से मतलब कि वो कुछ डिस्टर्ब भी नहीं कर रहा है किसी किसी को, तो वो अचानक से जब उसके लाइफ में एक ऐसा सिचुएशन आता है कि उसके बेटे के कारण उसको कुछ सहना पड़ता है, वो भी उस स्पेस में जहाँ पे वो मेहनत करता है, जहाँ पे वो सारी मतलब कि अपना सारा जो एनर्जी है वो लगाता है, और वहाँ पे उसको ह्यूमिलिएट किया जाए उसी उसी काम के लिए जो वो रोज़ करेगा आगे भी जीवन में, तो उसमें उसको चोट पहुँचती है अंदर। तो फिर वो कैरेक्टर निकल के बाहर कैसे आएगा? उसका जो दूसरा मतलब कि जो वो है अंदर, जो उसका पर्सनैलिटी जो दबा हुआ है, जो सप्रेस कर दिया है उसने, और वो शराब पी कर के निकलता है, तो वो बाहर कैसे आएगा? तो उसको दिखाने के लिए, मतलब कि उसको निकालने के लिए एक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट मैंने लिखा कि ये है, और उसके बाद जो उसका रिस्पॉन्स था वो नेचुरली क्या होगा, वो मतलब कि वो सोचा और वो लिखा। तो ये
For Nazar, I think that there were two things kind of happening. In the states, I was a video producer for a senator, and so I got to see a lot of how people in power kind of made decisions, and it can be a little bit difficult to see. But then on the other side, when I think about my my family and how they were responding to what they were seeing on WhatsApp in India, and seeing that was also sometimes pretty concerning. And the common thing that I saw, both in people in power and just people who don't have power, is that a lot of fear, stoking fear. And I was really interested in exploring fear and how fear of very reasonable things, in the case of Nazar, it's a fear of losing one's livelihood, the fear of your child's health. These are very reasonable fears. But if directed in and channeled in the wrong way, can be a very, very dangerous emotion. And so I kind of wanted to look at how fear, something that we think of as protecting us, can be something that can be very harmful to those who don't have power.
I also want all three of you to touch upon a little on your directorial process when you're like directing actors, because all three of you also have films that are kind of led by your lead performances, especially in your film. I think it's the lead character who kind of like drives the film, but it's also his expression on his face that we kind of also gauge where the film is going. So take us a little through how you kind of cast your actors, how you kind of directed them, and also what your directorial process is. Are you someone who likes it when actors stick to the written material, or are you open to improvisation? How does that all work?
क्योंकि मेरी ये पहली फ़िल्म थी, तो मेरा प्रोसेस जो था एक्टर को डायरेक्ट करने का या फिर कास्ट करने का, मेरे लिए था कि जो लुक चाहिए हमको, वो मेरे दिमाग में था कि हमको ऐसा चाहिए, तो इसलिए मुरारी सर का लुक परफेक्ट बैठा मेरे लिए। तो उनसे बात करके मतलब कि उन्हें बताया कि इमोशन क्या है हर सीन का। क्योंकि मेरा एक्सपीरियंस जो है हम उनको एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं, लेकिन फिर वो कैरेक्टर को लिमिट कर देगा। तो हम उनसे बात की है कि जो आपके लाइफ में जो ऐसा मतलब कि मोमेंट रहा हो जहाँ पे आप बहुत ह्यूमिलेटेड फील किए हों, उसको याद करें और उसको याद करके अपना कैरेक्टर बिल्ड करें, ताकि मतलब कि मेरा एक्सपीरियंस और आपका एक्सपीरियंस मिल करके कुछ अलग निकले। तो वो मेरा प्रोसेस वही है कि राइटिंग जो मेरा है वो है, जो डायलॉग्स लिखते हैं वो लिखते हैं, लेकिन हम चाहते हैं कि मेरा जो एक्टर है वो अपने लाइफ के एक्सपीरियंसेस को भी उस डायलॉग में लेकर के आए, चाहे वो अपने तरीके से बोले उसको, चाहे वो अपने तरीके से एक्सप्रेशन दे, लेकिन वो फिट बैठना चाहिए। तो मेरा वही प्रोसेस था।
Um, this film wouldn't have been possible without a local Hindi theater company called Mundi Theater. I had worked with them on my previous project, and I realized just how deep and rich this theater's passion was. It's a small theater; it's Chicago-based, but it's a bunch of people who came to America to do typically, the stereotypical jobs, but they have a deep passion for acting. So I wrote the script in English, and they translated it into Hindi Urdu. And the casting process was kind of working with their actors. When it came to actually working with them, मेरा हिंदी उतना अच्छा नहीं है, पर मैं कोशिश करता हूँ. And so working with them in Hindi while I'm directing them in English was a challenge, but I think they were so understanding, and I tried to give them the space that they needed. Um, it was definitely one of those things that they needed a script to stick to the script, because we had very very choreographed camera movements, and we and in theater, thankfully, you can't deviate from the script in most theater productions, and so they were used to that process. Yeah.
Like in this case, the process for me was almost backwards, because this is the final year graduation film for the actors who are in the film, and I was called to write and direct a film for them. So I already knew the people who were going to be part of the film, but and the film kind of emerged from them. I stayed with them for about a week or 10 days, and then just hung out together and got to know them a little better. And then, like, and we were working on something else earlier. Like I had a concept earlier that I went with, and then I met them. I thought, this is not this is not right for these guys. And then on the way back from Pune to Mumbai, in fact, I saw a crane. Okay, those electric, those cranes that, where people repair the street lights, those long ones, and that looked like a flamingo, like with, and so that kind of completed the circle for me. The other, like, I had these ideas for a long time, but that kind of, I thought, okay, maybe I can work on that now. And then I started writing the script with these people in mind. So it was almost reverse engineered in that way. Uh, but then once I had written the whole thing, like, and I went back and worked with them, we did a lot of workshops around what was written, and then we kind of found the language, like, because it was me writing whatever that was, right? And these were real people, and then they kind of populated, whatever this paper was, and made it their own. So I think that process was very interesting. But
I also am curious to know, what is the one freedom that you think the medium of short films allows you, that you enjoyed the most while making all three of your respective films?
I think that there are two things that I really like about short films. One is you kind of don't have the pressure of necessarily hitting a certain minute point, 90 minutes or whatever. So you can make it as brief as you want and kind of create a mood. But the other thing, and arguably the thing that was more important to me in terms of the journey that I had was it allowed me to go as deep into my artistic, like, indulgences as I wanted. I don't have to worry about selling a feature film in black and white in a period piece. Like, that's not. It's something that is for an art for its art's sake. And in the U.S., we don't get government funding for our film, so making money back is the responsible thing to do to investors, and it's tough to do that when you're trying to pitch something in the essence of what Nazar is. So being able to kind of just push the boundaries as far as you want to, and find what you tickles you, is one of my favorite things about short films.
Um, I don't know. Like I honestly don't see that as a demarcation, and in the sense that I mean, of course, when you're starting out and uh, you can play around a lot more, and it's not as um, daunting as a feature film, Like, but I could have easily made a feature film with this the same thing, but we had a limitation from the institute, like we had to finish in 30 minutes or whatever. So we did, but but yeah, I mean one is like for me it's one is discovering the film while one is making it, and so when you kind of know that this is it, then whether it's 10 minutes or 50 minutes, I think it's the same. Yeah.
क्योंकि मेरा मेरा पहला फ़िल्म है, तो जब आप शून्य से शुरुआत कर रहे हैं, तो आपको सीखने के लिए शॉर्ट फ़िल्म बहुत अच्छा मेथड है, क्योंकि आप लिखते हैं कहानी, उसको स्क्रिप्ट टू स्क्रीन ट्रांज़िशन जो होना है उसका, जो इमोशन जो राइटिंग में है, क्योंकि राइटिंग में आप इमेजिन कर सकते हैं, रीडर्स इमेजिन कर सकते हैं, लेकिन फ़िल्म विजुअल्स में आप पूरा दे रहे हैं सबको सब कुछ, तो उसमें इमोशन कैसे जनरेट किया जाए, उसके लिए सीखने के लिए शॉर्ट फ़िल्म बहुत ज़रूरी माध्यम है मेरे लिए। तो शॉर्ट फ़िल्म हमको अलाउ किया कि फ़िल्म मेकिंग कैसे करते हैं, वो कैसे सीखा जाए, तो उसके लिए काफ़ी मददगार रहा मेरे लिए।
Pranjal, you talked about like when you discover a film, I think that's all that matters. It doesn't matter. The runtime doesn't come into effect as much, which makes me also like curious to know, is there a moment when you're like directing a film when you know for yourself that you've discovered a film? Like, when does that moment come in when you at least know that, okay, I feel like I know what the film is? And does that make the remaining process easier?
Yeah, no, I think like I think the discovery is the fun part, like that is the process. No, for me, like if you already know exactly what you're gonna be doing for the next 12 months, I think it's not fun, and it's not you're not growing for me. Like I feel that if you get into something, like it's not like you already know everything about it and then you're just gonna tell it, then it does nothing to you personally, right? So you're like, and there are, so it can be very small things that maybe you discover about yourself in the process. It could be something about the idea that has sparked this whole thing, and you're just trying to find it and mold it. But I think when that discovery is over, is when the film is over for me. Like you kind of you asked that day about detachment, right? So I think the moment I know, okay, I know where this is going, I'll be like, okay, I'm done now. Like I won't be interested in it anymore. So for me to be interested and to be at it, I think I need to keep discovering more and more. Yeah, sorry. Long answers.
No, that's completely fine. Sean, I want to know from you, what are the challenges, like from your personal experience, what are the challenges of funding independent short films in the US? Because you primarily work there and you make movies there. So, what are the kind of funding challenges there?
I, you know, As I'm learning more about the Indian film industry, it's kind of shocking how similar India and US both are in terms of how funding works. ROI is like the number one thing on most people's minds, and I think that's like, I don't know, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I think commerce and art, they can sometimes help each other, not all the time, but sometimes. I mean, the funding challenges are always the same. Where are you going to be getting your money from? And while there isn't the large institutional support that you often see in for example France, um, I I Chicago encourages filmmakers by maybe not necessarily always giving grants, but by giving discounted rates for equipment or studio space or things like that. But what I personally have found is if you find a lot of people who really love making films, making art, um, you're not going to be charging a wild amount of money to be a part of it. And more importantly, these are people who you really want to be working with. So really, I would say the solution that I'm trying to find is working with people who just love it for what it is.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. So basically, I think we need to have discovered the film for the funders beforehand, right? Like you need to like all those things. No, we write treatment notes, and it's all whatever. I don't think any filmmaker is sure when they get into it. I think they discover it only. But just to get 50,000 people on the same page, you need something. So yeah, I mean, you go to a point and then you're like, okay, now let's find what it is about, yeah.
You talked a little bit about collaboration and how, the idea is to find people who will like join you and do it because they love doing what you also like doing. Um, in that vein, I want to like from each of you know what was the one collaboration, one or two, with say any other, could be with a DOP, could be with an actor in your films that excited you the most while you were making a film.
Our editor did not speak Hindi. And so she was going off of a transcript in English and Hindi. And I mean, the idea of editing a foreign film for her was something that she was really concerned about. But what I found is that there is a rhythm to dialogue that she was more able to be attuned to because she wasn't being bogged down by the meaning of the dialogue. It becomes much more of a musical element, and that musicality is so important in our film. And I think that was a very very cool collaboration because I think the film is so much stronger for the fact that she didn't speak Hindi.
मेरे साथ जो सारे लोग थे, स्निग्धा यहाँ बैठी हुई, आकाश यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं, मेरे क्रू मेंबर्स, और मेरा डीओपी नितेश शर्मा। तो ये हम सारे साथ में स्टार्ट किए वो बैच, और हमने फर्स्ट ईयर से डिसाइड किया कि हम साथ में काम करेंगे पहले फ़िल्म पे। तो वो कोलैबोरेशन मेरा जो है इन सब के साथ, क्योंकि दोस्त भी हैं हम लोग, तो बहुत ज़्यादा लड़ाइयाँ भी होती है सेट में।
I was just about
हाँ।
to ask, like, is it easier or harder to work with your friends?
मेरे लिए तो मतलब कि शूट के दौरान तो काफ़ी मुश्किल होता है, क्योंकि मतलब कि शॉट्स के बीच में लोकेशन चेंज हो रहा है, और हम आकाश यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं और नितेश शर्मा बाइक पे जा रहा है और लड़ रहे हैं हम लोग कि साउंड वाला ये ऐसा कर रहा है वैसा कर रहा है, ये सारी चीज़ें हो रही हैं। लेकिन जब जैसे ही सेट पे पहुँचते हैं हम लोग, काम करना शुरू करते हैं, तो सब कुछ काम हो जाता है, वापस शॉट ख़त्म करते हैं, फिर से लड़ाई करते हैं। तो ये काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग प्रोसेस है मेरे लिए, क्योंकि नितेश मेरा बहुत अच्छा दोस्त है, और वो मेरा सेट पे कभी भी इज़्ज़त नहीं करेगा, मेरी बात नहीं सुनेगा कभी भी। लेकिन इवेंचुअली हम लोगों को मालूम है कि हम लोगों को एक ही फ़िल्म चाहिए जो हमारे दिमाग में है। हाँ, तो वो काफ़ी अच्छा रहता है अगर आप सोच लें कि आपको विश्वास हो अपने क्रू पे, तो चीज़ें आसान हो जाती हैं कि आप अपना विज़न बता पाते हैं, उनका भी विज़न सेम होता है, तो एक अच्छे फ़िल्म के लिए काम करते हैं। तो यही है मेरा।
I've decided that I'll only work with friends now. So I just want to make more friends. you know. But I think that's the only way. I don't think if there is a distance between your core collaborators, it just won't happen. And I've been a part of crews like that, and I know it's not it's not the best way to work. It's not worth it only. The question was about
The one collaboration that excited you the
about this,
most.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this again, like Shweta, who's the editor, like him, like I've worked with her on every film that I've ever done, and our process is that we have chai together. That is our process, and we find the film like that. And Archana I was working with for the first time, and but she had worked on a project that I was part of earlier, and so we knew each other, and I kind of knew that somewhere if I do work with her, we'll this will be amazing. Like because I could see that there are things that she's interested in that my eye goes to straight away. So those same things we could find. Shashank, who's the sound designer, again like superb collaborator. First time, एंड अब दोस्त बन गए तो सबसे ज़्यादा आई थिंक टाइम हमने साउंड पे स्पेंड किया एंड इट वाज द मोस्ट अमेजिंग एंड द मोस्ट रिलैक्स्ड time because we could just sit in a dark room and listen to the film, and that was amazing. But the most amazing collaboration for me here were the 10 actors. There were 10 actors in this batch. You see 5 more than the other 5 because that's how we had to kind of go about it. 5 people we had to choose as lead cast, and there were 5 supporting cast. But the entire process and the way all 10 of them came together to make the film happen, because it was ultimately their final project, right? And just the way they were supporting each other and the crew, and just they were the energy on set, and that was just amazing.
When you're writing a film or when you know you want to make a film, how much of your energy is spent on thinking what happens to the film after you make it, in terms of like who gets to see it, where does it go, like how much of that worry comes to your head while you're embarking on a project, even though I know you want to make a film because you really want to tell the story, but how much of that aspect of, okay, this film also needs to go out so that people can see, and how does like film festivals come in, in that context?
Um, so I have been working in Bombay for the last 8-10 years now. I've done a series and 2 series, and there's one which is being made right now for Prime. But this was so special, going back to this kind of a setup and making this film was so special that now I'm very confused as to what I really want to do, because this is like I always knew that I wanted to do this kind of filmmaking, and I guess if you go to a film school, you're also surrounded by people who are doing their own thing, and there are no compulsions like he said about like money or and what happens to the film, and all of those things don't come into the picture. So you're just experimenting, you're just playing essentially, and this felt like that again. And so now we'll have, like, film festivals are the only way. There's no other way. Like, I don't know who's going to look at these kind of films, and where do they go? They don't go anywhere. It's the festivals. Yeah.
क्योंकि ये मेरा पहला फ़िल्म है।
और आपका कॉलेज प्रोजेक्ट है।
कॉलेज प्रोजेक्ट है, तो पहले तो हम सोचे नहीं इतना कि इसके बाद क्या करेंगे, पहले तो फ़िल्म बनाना ज़रूरी था। लेकिन स्निग्धा ने काफ़ी हेल्प किया कि इसके बाद क्या करना है, कहाँ भेजना है, कैसे भेजना है, तो वो प्रोसेस मेरे लिए काफ़ी नया है कि वो जानना, वो सीखना कि फ़िल्म का क्या होगा फ़िल्म के बाद। तो वो अभी सीख रहे हैं हम, तो शायद अगले फ़िल्म के बाद आपको अच्छे से बता पाएँ कि क्या करना है।
I do think about where the film will go, but to me, it's poison. It's poison in the writing process. If I'm ever getting too high and I think this is going to be in Mammy, that is not helpful for me. Or if I ever go too low and think I'm the worst filmmaker ever and I shouldn't be putting pen on paper, that's not helpful either. I need to be right on the ground, and for that, that means I just need to be immersed in the story and be thinking about the characters and be living in that moment. So yeah, those thoughts creep in about where do I want this to go? Is this marketable? Is this going to make, is this going to help me in my career? But those are thoughts that I need to push away to actually be truthful to the story.
I know as directors, like you're never happy, like entirely, completely, 100% happy with what you've made. And I'm pretty sure when you see it on the big screen, you can find like 5 or 6 things you could have done better, or, things that don't look the way you intended to. But I also want to know, when you did see all of your films on the big screen for the first time, how much of how close do you think the film got to like showing the director in you, like your voice or your personality or what you want to say? How close do you think your films went, and how did you assess the films when you saw it on the big screen?
I think ठीक ठाक है.
Same.
Like it's sorry. No, but it's very difficult to. I think 1 year later, I'll be able to give an objective answer to how far we got and whatever, because yeah, 1 year next Mami.
Yeah, I just can't. I can't. I don't know how to feel about it right now. I'm proud of the fact that collaborators are happy. I'm proud of the fact that audiences are responding to it. But when I look at within myself and trying to find the internal validation of making something, it's just I completed a project, and in the end, that is the most important thing, because there's so many projects that live in our heads that are just never completed. So the joy is in the completion, and how good or bad it is not something I want to be too bogged down by.
इसमें एक राज कपूर जी का इंटरव्यू है, मेरा नाम जोकर के बाद उन्होंने कहा था कि जो फ़िल्में हम बनाते हैं वो हमारे बच्चे की तरह है, और वो जो बच्चा है वो ख़राब हो चाहे अच्छा, उसमें हम डिफरेंशिएट नहीं कर सकते. माँ हमेशा अपने बच्चों को एक्सेप्ट कर लेती है. जो अच्छा बच्चा है वो शायद बाहर जाके बड़ा आदमी बन जाए, सब कुछ हो जाए, वापस नहीं आए. लेकिन जो ख़राब बच्चा अगर वापस भी आता है तो उसको एक्सेप्ट कर लेते हैं हम. तो ये है मेरे फ़िल्म के बारे में, मतलब कि अगर वो ख़राब बने चाहे अच्छा, वो तो है.
Okay. What do each of you think is like the biggest stylistic risk that you took while, like, in terms of how the film looks or what you've tried saying with it? What creatively or stylistically, what is the biggest risk that each of you have taken?
Yeah, the obvious answer for me is black and white. The maybe the less obvious answer would be, in a time where cameras are getting smaller and lighter and more mobile than ever. Something that my DP and I talked about was treating the camera like it's 50 or 75 pounds, so that it has the feeling of Bharat Koj, so it has the feeling of our references, and so I think that was fun.
I remember the first time I saw the film and I saw how it was shot, the first thing I thought of was how resourceful it was, because you could tell that it was also done to kind of ensure that you don't have to spend a lot of money to get the same effect. Because when you shoot in wide shots or whatever, it's a lot of things get exposed. So I thought that was really, really clever, because you could see a resourceful filmmaker who's saying the story they want to say, but in a very different way, and that doesn't come at the cost of financial or any other artistic kind of limitation. So that was really great.
Yeah, thank you.
We knew that we were going to be shooting in monsoons, peak monsoons, and that there won't be any flamingos around. So yeah, that was. Basically, you're making a film about flamingos, but without them. I think that was a conversation, not a risk, but it was a conversation that we had at some point between the crew members, and you're like, हाँ ठीक है, it's fine.
जो 70s का थीम चुना था, कि इसको दिखाना है कि वो एंग्री यंग मैन 70s वाले, और जो ड्रीम सीक्वेंस जब शूट किया, क्योंकि वो दीवार के एक सीन से इंस्पायर्ड है, तो उसको पुल ऑफ करना थोड़ा सा मुश्किल था, काफ़ी दिक्कतें हुई. और बाकी तो क्योंकि हम जब शूट कर रहे थे, तो वो पीक हीट वेव था कोलकाता में उस समय, और 4 दिन का शूट था, एक्सटीरियर और पटरियों पे था, तो काफ़ी ख़राब मौसम, काफ़ी गर्मी थी, और उस दौरान बहुत मतलब कि केओस भी था, क्योंकि लोग बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब कि केओटिक होता है शूट, लोग परेशान हो जाते हैं, और इस गर्मी में हमको बस लग रहा था कि किसी को कुछ हो नहीं जाए, क्योंकि पटरियों पे शूट कर रहा है। तो वो सारी चीज़ें आराम से पुल ऑफ हो गई, कोई किसी को चोट नहीं लगी या फिर कोई हर्ट नहीं हुआ। तो मेरे लिए चैलेंजिंग वही था कि वो जो 4 दिन का शूट है वहाँ पे, वो हो जाए आराम से।
How long after finishing one project do you guys get started on your next project? In terms of just thinking about it or working on it, not necessarily, writing down a script, but what is the time, what is the break or the gap that you give yourself before you get back again?
So there are. I usually can only focus on one thing at a time, and so it takes me a long time. It's not viable to do that in Bombay, but but yeah, I mean it's so I have been, but since this was a project that kind of came to me, and it, like, the genesis wasn't like me starting to think about this. So this happened fairly quickly and in the middle of something that I'd been writing for a long time. But because this happened, I just stopped doing that, and I've not picked it up again. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I think it takes me a while to get that energy going again for something that you truly want to do. Yeah.
जब तक इंस्टीट्यूट वाले बोलना शुरू नहीं कर दे कि अगला प्रोजेक्ट कंप्लीट करो, निकलो यहाँ से, तब तक हम भी समय लेते हैं अपना, क्योंकि लिखते रहते हैं। तो मतलब कि कभी लिखते हैं, कभी नहीं लिखते, कभी सोचते हैं। तो अभी मेरा डॉक्यूमेंट्री चल रहा है, तो उसमें है, और वो भी चल रहा है लगभग 2 महीने से। तो वो अब मेरा वही है कि अभी भी हम इस शॉर्ट फिल्म से निकले नहीं हैं, कि लोग आकर के बोलते हैं, मतलब कि मेरा क्रू आकर के बोलता है, नितेश निगदा, कि इसमें और कुछ कर सकते हो। तो वो चलते रहता है काम, और साथ में जो बाकी प्रोजेक्ट्स है उसको भी कंप्लीट करना है। तो पता नहीं निकल पाएंगे कि नहीं उससे हम कभी, लेकिन देखते हैं आगे क्या होता है।
After I complete a project, I really go through a really tough time emotionally, because I put so much time and energy into it, and I feel like I have a purpose. And then when it's done, it's very very difficult for me to reorient myself. And so I start writing again pretty immediately. The writing now, when do I start my next project, is a little bit tougher for me to answer, because even though I'm writing, it's not like I'm just writing whatever I'm feeling, and I hope that something that I write will stick and will become my next project. But there are hundreds of pages that are just, sitting in my apartment that aren't going to be made, but just those pages need to be written for the next project to be made.
I'm really jealous
Of what?
of like hundreds of ideas and all. Good, yeah.
Not good ideas.
I remember at the screening that we had, Sean, you mentioned that you're also inspired by folk tales and mythology when you're working on scripts or you want to make films, and we can see that in Nazar. So I want to ask all three of you, what are the kind of themes or stories that you find yourself like gravitated towards in like generally, and that may, it doesn't need to be like the main focus of whatever you're doing, but it seeps into your work somehow.
Okay. I think I've tended to kind of I don't know some why this happens, but basically uh, irony, essentially. When there's like a paradox, like there's some kind of thing which is happening, but it, um like how do I explain this? Okay. For example, in this one itself, people were given houses in this SRA colony right next to a oil refinery, and and it's a pakka ghar, which most people in Bombay will not be able to afford. But at what cost, right? So is it really rehabilitation if you're worse off than you were earlier? So these kind of things, I tend to gravitate towards these things that cannot be explained. And so I feel that this is like a very fertile ground to explore certain themes and characters, and yeah, and build on them. Yeah.
I don't know if there's ever any one thing that I go back to. When I was writing Nazar, yeah, I was obsessed with folktales, and not just Indian folktales from all around the world. But it's one of those things where I try not to let my curiosity be encumbered. So right now I'm like obsessed with chess. I'm not a good chess player, but I'm just learning as much about chess and chess history as I can. Couldn't tell you why. I have no idea why, but that's just what I'm into right now. And just letting that curiosity go wherever it ends up. I think that's something that is my process. It might take a little bit longer because I don't think I'm going to make a chess film next, but I might. I really don't know. Yeah.
मेरा भी कुछ सेम ही जवाब है कि अभी तो मतलब कि क्योंकि सिनेमा काफ़ी मेरे समाज का बहुत बड़ा हिस्सा रहा है। मेरे स्कूल के रास्ते में 3 सिनेमा घर पड़ते थे, तो वहाँ भीड़ देख कर के काफ़ी मतलब कि बचपन से हर जगह डिबेट चलता था, शाहरुख खान को लेकर के, अक्षय कुमार को लेकर के, सलमान खान को लेकर के। तो इन सारी डिबेट्स के पार्ट रहे हैं बच्चे में, और भले ही कुछ बोले नहीं, लेकिन वो मेरे दिमाग में था कि बॉलीवुड मेन स्ट्रीम से बहुत ऑब्सेस थे। गोविंदा एरा हो, चाहे राज कपूर एरा हो, चाहे बीच में एंग्री यंग मैन एरा हो। तो ये सारी चीज़ें मुझे अभी इंटरेस्ट कर रही हैं। उसके बाद भी साहित्य से कुछ कुछ चीज़ें अपील करती हैं, जैसे कि उदय प्रकाश की कहानियाँ हैं, और या फिर ओम प्रकाश वाल्मीकि का जो नॉवल है, तो वो सारी चीज़ें से भी हम इंस्पायर होकर के आगे कुछ बनाएंगे। लेकिन अभी मेरा कोई फिक्सेटेड नहीं है कि इस चीज़ को ही बनाना है, उस चीज़ को ही, या यही थीम है या वही थीम है। हम एक्सप्लोर करना चाहते हैं अभी और।
My last question to all three of you: what is your biggest fear as a director, and what are the kind of things that you do to like ensure that you overcome it, or like overcome it in some way?
Okay, I think, and I'm sure like every filmmaker feels this, but um, it's about whether one will be able to make the kind of films that one wants to make. Like it's not, it's not some like the medium itself is not. It's a very expensive medium, and lots of factors kind of play into making anything, and so वो ही लगता है कि कभी कि whether all those things will overpower what you want to explore, or will you be able to kind of navigate this somehow. So this is, yeah, I think one of my biggest fears. Yeah.
मेरे लिए वो जो फिल्म मेकिंग में अनसर्टेनिटी है, जो कि कुछ भी निश्चित नहीं है कि आप लिख लिए हैं, आप बना पाएंगे उसको, या फिर बनाए हैं तो अच्छा बनेगा कि नहीं, या फिर कोई एकदम सर्टेन प्रोसेस नहीं है कि आपने एक बार सीख लिया तो अगली बार वो काम आएगा ही। आपको इनोवेट करते रहना है। तो वो जो अनसर्टेनिटी है, सबसे बड़ा डर है मेरे लिए। और उसको ओवरकम करने के लिए मतलब कि बहुत सारी चीज़ों चीज़ों को एक्सप्लोर करना ज़रूरी है। कैसे चीज़ें काम करती है, मार्केट कैसे काम करता है, ऑडियंस कैसे, मतलब कि क्या चाहिए उनको, तो वो सब चीज़ें सोचना ज़रूरी है। तो वो जो डर है मेरा, वो अनसर्टेनिटी ही है अभी तक।
Yeah, I think a lot about my fears as a director, and I think fundamentally the biggest one is self-censoring myself. Whether that's because I feel like the thing that I'm writing or I'm about to make is not good enough, or that the thing that I'm writing or about to do next is not marketable or whatever. I think my deepest fear is not creating.
I think that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. The package Social Animal is playing, I think, tomorrow or day after again. Today, and also tomorrow on the 2nd. So please do catch it. There are 5 films. There are films by 3 of them, plus a film by Nuhash Humayun called Foreigners Only from Bangladesh, and a film called Char Chapale by a very little known filmmaker called Anurag Kashyap. So please do find time to check both of them out. Thank you so much. And thank you all three of you for
Thank
joining.
you, Paul. Thank you.